Hello there. This is a video about some practice ideas for the study by Friedrich Burgmüller from the Opus 109 set, La fileuse, the Opus 109 number 15. So this is the picture of the lady or the girl, the female at the spinning wheel, spinning the material, the fleece or whatever, into yarn to make a thread or material, the thread that can be used to make clothes and things. So this idea of the spinning wheel, which was in those days powered by a treadle, by the feet, is of course very common in 19th century music, with Schubert, Gretchen at the spinning wheel, some Mendelssohn spinning song, and this one. So this idea of both the spinning movement and the fast spinning movement, and also the idea of a song, because people could be singing while they're doing that, was quite common. There's all sorts of things you can look at with the way that the movement would be not completely constantly. When the treadle gives it a kick, it sort of, and that can apply to rubato. So there's very arguments about how the rubato should work in these sort of pieces. Let's not worry about this here, because he actually writes in the rubato here with the writs and things like that. The other thing about this piece is that it's that famous, very common romantic technique of trying to make the piano sound like it has three hands. It has the accompaniment, it has the melody, if you like the song, and then it has the spinning part there. Again, it's that thumb melody, at least here, just as we have in famous pieces by Liszt. And if you're thinking about the sort of posture in this piece, it's worth looking at that famous painting by Dannhauser of Liszt at the piano from, I think, 1840, where you can see very much how his romantic piano posture is different to the way the classical pianists or the clavinists or the Baroque people would have played. You can see here drawing out the sound with the thumb. So one thing we'll talk about is how to achieve this three layers of sound. Obviously a good way is to practice them separately. So you'd practice and balance these ones. If you were to practice that, so here I'm trying to do the Liszt sort of posture and draw out the sound there rather than hitting into the keys. If you were to practice without the pedal, perhaps we would practice this way. So that we can actually practicing the crotch at length as opposed to the quavers with the quaver rest in the left hand. This shift here, where the thumb is shifting there, which I just missed, is also a good way to practice. Now, whether we're holding that when, I think is not necessary. The pedal is going to hold that. But that's a good way to practice that part there. Similarly, of course, we must be very clear about what the fingering is we're using. In that case, it's all the thumbs. Until we get to the start of the scale where it's 2. In the second page, the B section, where we have this build up. There, the fingerings in 4 is 4 and 5, the other side of the hand. And I think in this bar here, it's important to think about what the fingering is going to be. This edition has a 4, 5, 5, 4, 5, which works quite well when you put the other parts, because you go to the 5. This one is a bit of a jump, but that helps to make the crescendo, and then it's easy to come back there. So important to memorize and learn those sort of things there, being able to teleport from one to another. The next line, where we have the 5th finger, to be able to produce the sound, drawing the sound out, not have our hand stretched out. So sometimes it's good to practice that by itself, again with the length. If you're having trouble with the fifth finger and it's all like this, we can use the famous pencil technique. Why are we using that? Because the pencil is very pointy, and if I play my pencil and my finger, it encourages me to have that sort of shape there, and then I can take the pencil away and just play it with my finger. Let's look at the beginning here, how we get the 3 layers. So we have also the layer that's, or maybe, to get that flowing, we need to have a sort of gesture. So we can practice again slowly. I could either practice with the melody there, I'll try without. So I think the arm needs to come around, so it's closing on the 5th finger like that. If I put the melody in there, I'm not holding it this time. Then I'm into the scale. If we have a problem with doing that gesture, one little tricky technique we can do is to substitute the thumb for the 5th at the top. So I would play this slowly. 1, 2, 4, 5, 4, 2. 1, 2, 4, 5, 4, 2. 1, 2, 4. No, so 5, 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 4, 1, 4, 2. 1, 4, 2, 1. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 2. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3. And then I can put that back in. Another very good way is just to close on those ones. So this part is closed and comfortable. You could, if you're having trouble, trill on it. Like that, keeping it floating like that. When we come to bar 2, probably be aware that 1, 2, 4, 5, 4, 2, 1. We've got the repeat there of the D with 2 and the D with 1. Whereas the next time when it's a 2 F sharp, 2, 2, or you could go to 2, 3, 2, 2. You need to decide what you're doing there. So there's some ways of practicing that. When we put it together, again, if we were to practice without the pedal, try to have a different touch on this and this very low. I'm not trying to hold it. You could try and hold it. That will depend on your hand shape and the degree of your technique, how flexible you are there. I think in performance I wouldn't worry too much about holding it, but that could be a quite useful practice technique. One other practice technique for these is to reverse them. So going from here to, but if we were to play, like that, that can help if we're having trouble with this hand being really stiff there. When we practice with the pedal, I think practicing slow is obviously the way to do it, especially when you're learning the piece and haven't practiced it, like I haven't practiced it. Gives you time to really concentrate on the dynamics and the different layers of the sound. I think that's important. You'll notice that these notes here, the accent notes, have that sort of accent like that. When we get to the B section and we have the melody now in the top, what ways can we practice that? So we've looked at this one. If we the other parts. That jump. That's quite a big jump, but I think it's worth it. It's worth doing. You could, if you're having trouble, practice this as a practice method with just the thumb or the third finger. If we were to do it with the thumb and then do the other notes. It's hard to know where we are, but and then here you could do the same thing if you practice with the thumb really slowly to get the closed hand and the real quality of bell-like quality you want. It also makes the jump more. I have to stop on it. Too pedantic, but could be quite useful. When we do the fifth finger, I think we want to close on that. So you're really picking that up, drawing it out of the sound, out of the keyboard. Hand close. That can be quite a useful way to practice, as can be stopping on the offbeats. Because sometimes they have the melody. So there's some ideas about getting those 3 layers of sound, which is a really important part in this piece. The other part, the other depiction of the spinning is these descending scales, and I think there's quite a lot of learning in those. Different fingerings are available. I like the fingering in this edition, which is based on this pattern. Which was thumb on the white note, second finger on the black note. If you only have 2 fingers to play a scale, the most efficient way to play is that. 2 on the blacks, thumb on the white. It's important to have that concept of this line that way, I think, and I would try and memorize that. But then the question is, if we try and memorize the fingering for every note, it becomes quite complicated. I'm trying to look at the next note that comes after it. So here we have 1 and 4. We have to have 4 because that's going to go down to the 2 there. 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3. No, 1 and 4. 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, because the next one has to be the F sharp on 2, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 2 and 3, 5 and 3. I believe if I can memorize those patterns like that, I'll be able to play it fairly well without having to think about every note as they go past so quickly. There is a pattern there, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, and then 1 and 4, 2 and 3 on those notes, 1 and 4, 2 and 3. Then after 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3. The next pattern, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3. We have to stick another 1 and 3 in there. 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3, then it changes it. So I think it would be good to be able to practice it and to learn it. Here's the extra 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. we should flow. The other way of looking at it is these patterns, which is possible. That's the second, third, and third note of each group, and the first one the other. I find that harder to memorize because it's in the middle of the rhythm. If I can really feel 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, 4, 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, 3. Hopefully it will just flow. I'm going too fast for myself. You have to practice that really slowly. It's just so good to do that. So there's some ideas there. The other thing about scales are these ones. This is bar 7. Where it doesn't do that, it could have just kept going, keeping going, but it jumps up again. Jumping to there. I guess we need to be very sure about the fingering in every pattern. Here, normally we would have 4 on the C sharp, but we have 3. And then do we jump there? What you could think of this as 2 scales. And then so it could sort of seem like 2 cascading. Or it could seem like 1 cascade. That's a lovely little interpretational thing there. I'll look at those scales at the end now, actually. Oh, the other thing that's very good to know is that bar 15 and bar 7 are effectively the same, so it's good to learn bar 15 as well. Except it jumps up, of course. It's the same as this, except it starts on D here. Okay, this part here. I like the pedaling in this edition, which is pedal. Sorry. No pedal. That works quite well. In all of these things where we've got if that becomes very uneven, it might be necessary to fill in the semiquaver rest with a note. Like that, and then putting it back to, or even reverse. On the last page, we have the interesting thing where we have the pattern of the second time bar. Sorry. So we have the delicate, dolcissimo, pianissimo. And then we have the crescendo. Back to our little spark there, while the left hand is staying very soft, I think. Maybe it could reflect that. So with these ones here, where it's going up there, we want to make sure that we our 5 and our 1 can substitute. Same things for practicing this. You can practice it the different ways around. When we get to this part here where we're getting to the end, some interesting fingering. Again, that repeat from 1 to 2 needs to be. Interesting fingering here in this book. 1, 2, 1 position, and then a change of position for the sforzando, which works quite well. So this, again, if we need to. having trouble, or invert the little spinning thing so it spins the other way around. We do want to have this. This sforzandos, 3 times sforzandos, and they shouldn't be like I did all the same, they should be different each time. So in slow motion, what might we have? Scale at the end, which is of course lots of fun. I think it's important to know where the beats are. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Nothing like really knowing where those main beats are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Even working from the end is a very good technique. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. like that. Okay, one other little thing to be careful of in this piece, which is a wonderful study with all these layers, is the anacrusis. The sometimes students with very weak students with bad rhythm don't play that in time. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Very slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've got to make sure that this is, because we don't usually have this dotted rhythm in this piece, so we need to make sure it's precise. Perhaps 2, 3, 4, 1, or 4, 1, 4, 4. Those variations to make sure it's really precise. The same thing in the B section. Perhaps from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So be careful about that. I hope you'll enjoy that, and that this is some useful practice tips there. And do enjoy this, a fantastic study at the end of this book with a lot of very good studies in there. Okay, thanks very much. Bye.